Let's design the Galactic line. Let's talk about people. Now, these people are not ready for prime time yet. I knew that people would take the longest of everything because they have the most variation. And we're going to talk about what I've been doing so far and why I can't do it this way and that sort of stuff. I don't have any problems. I have a clear path forward, but I thought it might be fun to show you the kinds of dead ends that you pursue when you're creating a game. And one of these dead ends is this character randomization model. Now, I'm going to be using some of this. It's not a complete dead end, but I can't do it just like this. And the reason should be clear if you've been keeping your eyes open. Everyone has the same facial shape. They have the same eye position. They have the same eye size. They have the same mouth. All of that is because I can't deform the face too far using blend shapes. If I wanted to bring her eyes closer together, make them more narrow set, I could do that using blend shapes, but the bones that animate her eyes would still be where they were originally, and the result is that if she were going to look to the left, one of her eyes would fly back into her brain and the other one would pop out of her head, which is probably not what we would like. So you can't deform the face too much using blend shapes. All you can do is make little structural changes to things that don't really animate, like the sides of the mouth or the jawline. You can change the lips to some extent, but even then, if you use another set of blend keys to animate the facial expressions, you're going to end up with double blend keys that don't really work very well together, and you might end up with some predator face when the meridian gets crossed and everyone's face turns inside out. Ah! So that's a little bit tough. I can't use just blend shapes for this. I have to do something else. I have to use bones. I have to actually pull the face with bones. So I'd have like an eye base bone, and the eye bone and the eyelid bones would be attached to it, and I'd move the eye base bone around, then it would pull the whole socket, as well as the attached eye. The problem with that, of course, is that they don't exist. I have to make those skeletons, and I have to do it in a very specific and obnoxious way. Let me talk about that in more detail now. And if you're familiar with how these sorts of things work, maybe you know some tricks that will help me, but we'll find out. So I do actually allow for bone scaling, and you can see here that she has a variety of heights and sizes based on her bone scaling. Now, this is all just very, very first try stuff. It's not something that I would be using in the final game, but you can see that you can get a variety of body shapes doing this, and I can do the same thing using the head if the head has bones that can do this. The problem is Mechanim barfs on rotation, on scaling animations. Mechanim does not like them. The problem is you can't do additive scaling animations. So what does that mean? Well, it means that you can do one scaling animation at a time. That is to say, you can scale one set of bones. And so, for example, if you wanted to have wide shoulders and be tall, you can't really do that. You can have wide shoulders, or you can be tall. You can also split it, so it's 50% wide shoulders and 50% tall. But the problem is you'll never be taller than that. It's 50%, meaning that you're only half as tall as you would have been, or half as taller. Once you start adding in more and more options, you start to get lower and lower percentages. So it's like, I want you to have narrow eyes and a big jaw and a high face and wide ears and wide shoulders and big feet, and now you only have 10% of each of those, and it's barely noticeable. So if Mechanim supported additive scaling animations, that would be possible, but it doesn't. So I have to use a different kind of animation. Now, if I use rotational animations, I could put bones in where when you rotate the bone, it stretches the face in just the right way. But the problem is that that would change the mounted bone's position as well. So if I were going to move the eyes further apart from each other, I'm making hand gestures like you can see me, then what would happen is the actual eye bones would now be pointed outwards with a wall-eyed stare. So that's obviously not something I can really do. It's not something I really want to do. The only option is to use translational animations, and that would be this. This is just a demo I made to make sure that I can do this. This is 3 layers, each one of which has the same animation played at a different speed. And it's a simple translational animation where I pull one bone. And I mean, I rip it out from the x-axis. I just yank it using a grab button. So there's no rotation involved, no scaling involved. I'm just pulling a bone. And they add together well. So that means that I can do any number of quote-unquote scaling operations as long as they are translations rather than scales. That's not too bad in theory, but in practice, there is a serious issue with Blender. Let me show you. Let me open up our dude. Hey, dude, where are you? There you are, dude. So here is our dude, or here will be our dude. Here's our dude. So let's say that I want to move the bone of the eyes, and this is currently the actual eye bone, but there'd actually be another bone that I'm moving that would move the flesh as well as the eye, and then this would just be for directing your pupil around. But here's the issue. Let's go ahead and move it. I press G, and it rotates. Woohoo! It does not translate. Yep. So in order for me to actually make these translations, I have to separate them from the parent. Here's an example of that. This is the bone that I was animating. G moves it around just fine, but it's not actually attached to any of the other bones. That's a big problem, because the eye is not something that just exists on its own in some faraway dimension. If I move the head like this, the eye has to follow. So I'm here to ask people whether or not they know. I've gotten a lot of really great Blender tips in the past. This one is simpler than my normal fare. I'm not asking you for tricks that Blender can't do. I'm asking you for something I know Blender can do. I just don't know how to do it. How do I move a bone as an animation when it's parented to another bone? Now I could do this in Unity, but that would require a lot of animating in Unity and in very specific and complicated ways. I'd prefer to do it in Blender if at all possible. So if you happen to know the answer to that question, or if you pop open Google and find that your Google foo is better than mine, please let me know ASAP, because that's what I've got to do next. Bone translation to make your face look funny. I think that's everything. Oh, there was one more thing I wanted to talk about, and that is the reason that Mr. Guy is naked. Mr. Guy is naked because at the moment, Mr. Guy and Mrs. Guy have different meshes. And therefore, any clothes that I model on one of them don't get modeled onto the other one. And I actually did model this onto him, but it didn't look right because it was like re-skinned funny. Anyhow, that means that everything that you model has to be modeled twice. So here is the big question for those of you who are in the know. Would it be better for me to use a unisex model? Now, that means that I'd probably end up with fairly soft-looking guys and fairly hard-looking women. Or I might be able to do some kind of trickery involving automatic mapping of clothes. Ooh, that would be fun. I actually did a lot of research about 5 years ago on that topic. I could probably pull that off if everything started at the same rough size. There's lots going on behind the scenes. Creating avatars for 3D games is not hugely easy. And now, if you know any tricks that I don't know, I'd be happy to hear them, but keep in mind that most of the really basic stuff I've already looked into. I've been doing this for a while now. But if you actually have some experience and you have some advice, I would love to hear it. Thanks for listening, and have a good one.